Hello, I'm Chuck Wolf, Chief Executive for Charles J. Wolf Associates, LLC. As a motivational speaker and a leadership consultant and executive coach and trainer, I often work with very successful people in their companies. Since many can't afford a professional, I volunteer to host a radio talk show called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel, on a nonprofit community radio station in Bridgeport, Connecticut, WPKN. My reason for doing the show is to share with as many people as possible this wonderful process for helping people manage their own emotions and their relationships with others. My goal is for everyone listening to learn to use the Emotion Roadmap to make life better. As you listen to me, help others, I hope you are also learning. As a Simsbury resident, I'm delighted to be able to make the show available through Simsbury TV. To learn more, go to my website, www.emotionroadmap.com. Thank you for listening and watching.
And this is Chuck Wolf, and you're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. I hope that you enjoyed last week's show. It was a special one with my colleague and friend Mark Brackett, who is the director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. If you missed the show, you can see it on the Public Radio Exchange. If you just type in Emotion Roadmap, you go to exchangeprx.org, and you will find the Mark Brackett conversation about his new book, Permission to Feel, F-E-E-L, Permission to Feel. It's a wonderful story that is very, very easy to read. You know, Mark is an academic with great research knowledge and background in the field of emotional intelligence, and he's somebody that I've worked with for a number of years now and got to know him probably somewhere almost 20 years ago now. And he is someone that has done some incredible work, and he's promoted this curriculum in schools from kindergarten through 12th grade that was based on his uncle's vision. His uncle had this amazing vision that just helped people to really enjoy schools and to participate in learning in ways that he envisioned would make them more interested, more engaged in what they were learning. I'll give you a quick example of what his Uncle Marvin had thought about and what Mark built on and what we talked about in that previous show last week. It was about having the idea that you could connect people's emotions and feelings to what you were trying to teach them. So he would give this example when he'd give talks about this. He would say, so when I was teaching my history class about the Romans and about a time when Caesar went down to the Roman Senate and told all the senators that, listen, you have to behave in this way and you have to vote this way and you have to support this idea. Do you all understand that? You all need to support me. And while they may or may not have agreed, it was important that they did what Caesar said because they feared Caesar. They feared Caesar's power. Now, that sounds interesting by itself, but if you're learning that and science and math and English all in the same day, and you've got lots of things that you're trying to remember, how do you make that stand out? And what Mark's Uncle Marvin would say to the students after he would introduce a story like that, he would say, have you ever felt like someone was telling you had to do something you really didn't want to do? Have you ever felt like somebody was sort of acting like a bully to you? What did that feel like for you? How did you respond to that? What did you do? And have you ever been that person? Have you ever made other people feel like they had to do something that they didn't want to do, but you wanted them to do it, and they feared you? And if you can picture what that feels like to have a classroom where all of a sudden you're no longer talking about Rome and the Senate and Caesar, but you're talking about your experience with your own friends, with your own circle. And the experience relates exactly to what the history has been talking about, but now it's personal. You won't easily forget about Caesar's relationship with the Roman Senate because you're now tied it to something you feel. And that helps with memory, obviously. And it also helps with engagement, doesn't it? Wouldn't you feel more engaged if you had a teacher that did that for you? And maybe you did. Maybe you were lucky enough that you had that happen. Well, Mark Brackett talks in this in our interview about some of what he wrote about, but I've known him for so many years. We talk about other things as well. But he talks about growing up and having some really inner turmoil about his experiences growing up being different. And I'll leave you to listen to the interview and to read Mark's book to know about the differences. But in any case, Mark talks about how he was a different kind of person growing up, and his parents really didn't understand him. And it wasn't because they weren't trying or that they didn't love him. They just didn't know how to relate to him. But his uncle did. And his uncle gave him permission to feel all the inner turmoil that was going on inside him and to talk about it. And from those early beginnings with his uncle and what his uncle conceived of as a history teacher, Mark went on to build a program called Ruler. Recognize emotions, understand emotions, label emotions, express emotions, and regulate emotions. The word Ruler is an acronym. So it's recognize, understand, label, express, and regulate emotions. And he has created the curriculum with lots of educators working with him, lots of people who study emotional intelligence and education working with him to create something that has gone around the world. Mark's programs are, I don't know how many continents, I think maybe every continent in the world. He's got programs all over the world that he has developed with Yale's support. And by the way, if you don't know already, because you may be new to the show, one of the ways I got started in the business of emotional intelligence was I worked with the president of Yale University, Peter Salovey. And so Peter then hired Mark to work in and to create this Center for Emotional Intelligence at Yale. Peter is one of the founding psychologists who first investigated it and understood that there is a different kind of intelligence than standard cognitive or analytic intelligence, and it's emotional intelligence. And we have emotional abilities, and our abilities are different, just like we have different mathematical abilities or different verbal abilities or spatial abilities. We have different emotional abilities as well. And Mark has created this amazing program. But his book is not academic. I mean, it has some academic elements, perhaps, but is so easily accessible. So whether you're involved with schools or you have children in schools or you have nothing to do with schools, but you just want to know ways that you can manage your emotions better and ways that you can deal more effectively with emotion for yourself, for your loved ones, and for anyone that you might have to deal with. Might be people you don't like, but you have to work with them anyway. Maybe people you don't trust, but you still have to depend on them. So understanding how you deal with emotions is really, really important in life. And Mark's book is really helpful for everyone who is interested in getting better at these skills. So I encourage you to listen to the interview. You can listen to it again on, it's also on podcast on SoundCloud and on iTunes and on Stitcher. But you can easily find it on exchangeprx.org, Public Radio Exchange. Just type in Public Radio Exchange Emotion Roadmap and it should pop up. And so that was last week. This week I just want to announce, this is the anniversary of my 10th year doing this radio show. So beginning next January, when I'm back on the air, and I'm on the air on Wednesdays from 12 noon to 1 p.m., and that's for the first and second Wednesdays of each month. When I'm on the air in January, that will be the beginning of my 11th year with the station. And so I just want to acknowledge all the support I've got from WPKN, and particularly a fellow named Lou Palmalis, who was the person who helped me to create this radio show and invited me to do so when he was a student of mine when I was teaching a graduate course on emotional intelligence in organizations at the University of Hartford. I guess a long time ago, because it's been 10 years since I've been doing this radio show. And Lou was really helpful in getting this to happen. Lou saw what I was doing in the classroom in terms of what I was teaching people. Thanks. Thanks. MSI is just congratulating me on my 10 years. Thank you, MSI. I appreciate it. Anyway, so Lou is somebody who just really was the guy who said, Chuck, I love what you're doing in the classroom. I wonder, would you be willing to do it on the radio? Because if you can be as good as you are in this classroom and helping us understand how to use this concept I call an emotion roadmap to help us to better manage our own emotions and the emotion relationships we have with others, if you can do that for people in our WPKN community, I think that would be a great addition to the already fabulous WPKN lineup that we've got. So I said, Lou, I'd love to. What do I need to do? And then Lou went about making that happen. And again, it's been 10 years, a lot of different iterations. I think back over some of the things that I've done and some of the things that were outstanding to me. I'll share a few of them with you. By the way, if you're a regular listener, thank you so much for tuning in. I always appreciate those people who, know I'm on the air 12 to 1 on Wednesdays, the first and second Wednesdays. And I really appreciate all of you that regularly tune in to listen. And you know what? If you've got a favorite moment over the years that you've listened and you'd like to share that, I would love that today. If somebody's, someone who's been listening for a long time, and you've got something that you really like about the show, it doesn't have to be something specific you remember, but just something about the show that you really think is value added, I'd appreciate hearing it. The number to call if you're interested and you want to share something along those lines is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. Now, the show is often about having people call in. The show's called The Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. I want to give a shout out to a friend of mine who's struggling these days. He's fighting cancer, and he's actually doing better, but it's a long road. And his name's Bruce Alster. And since I talked about Mark Brackett, I'll say a little bit about Bruce Alster. Back in 2001 to 2004, we all began a relationship together. Bruce and Mark Bruce I've known for much longer, but Bruce Alster was a recognized principal who had won a number of awards as a principal in Long Island, and before that he was assistant principal in Brooklyn, New York. And over the years, having won some awards, he established himself in his district as somebody who was an innovator, somebody who was empathetic, somebody who held people accountable and held himself accountable, and really worked extremely well with the community, with his teachers and his students. And Mark was in 2001 was this aspiring young PhD graduate who just was graduating. He had worked with Jack Mayer, who was Peter Salovey's colleague in this discovery of this concept of emotional intelligence abilities. And that we were all just starting out with this idea of emotional intelligence in schools. And at the time, I was teaching a certification program to anybody really, but people would sign up and they would come to a class I would run on teaching people how to be certified in an assessment that measured your emotional abilities. And in one of those first classes was Bruce and Mark. And when they met each other, a conversation started. And since, I can't even tell you how many years ago, long time ago, I was actually, my first real career position in life was as a junior high school guidance counselor, and then later as the state of Iowa's first elementary school counselor, where I was actually teaching kids about managing their feelings. I was teaching them how to deal with anger, depression, sadness, humiliation, embarrassment, really challenging feelings, but also how to create feelings, more pleasant feelings like happiness and satisfaction and engagement and inspiration. And I was doing all that work many, many years ago. My career has had many different kinds of turns over the years, but it's always been about human behavior and human feelings and emotions. And so way back when I was doing that kind of work, and then many years later I was working for Harvard Business School, and I was working for Exxon and for Hartford Insurance as the Director of Leadership Development. And then for the last 25 years, I've had my own company, which has always been about leader development and managing people's emotions as a leader, as a teammate, as an individual, managing your own emotions as well as your relationships with others, how that impacts performance is part of what I've focused on for many years now. But I also still continue to do some work in schools. And so we all had this opportunity to work together in a school setting, in Bruce's school setting. We went to work in Valley Stream. If you look at Mark's early work and his publications, you'll see that he references that first few years when Mark's uncle, Marvin, was still alive, and Bruce Alster introduced him to the Valley Stream School District. And that's where Ruler came from. That's where its origins began to happen. So I want to give a shout out to Bruce, and I want to just let Mark and Bruce know how much I've enjoyed the opportunity to have an impact on young children's emotions and helping holistically school communities deal with all these challenges that they face. Because if you look at the way kids are feeling in schools today, you don't get a good story. But I think Ruler and programs, other social and emotional learning programs, are helping to change that. So shout out to the two of them. Another interesting kind of look back into what I've done recently that I'm excited about is this Sandy Hook promise. I got a caller. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Oh my God, Chuck! I didn't want to be on the air. I wanted to call the office number. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, I'll let you go.
All right, thanks.
Thanks. Bye bye. The office number is 203-331-9756.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Okay. Number to call here is 203-336-9756. So anyway, if you happen to have a chance to listen to that program is so important. Politics is very much in the air today, and I imagine I've lost a few people that might be listening to the hearings going on. But I will say this about anything to do with gun safety, which has been, one of those issues that has people polarized all over the place, right? And being polarized, I think one of the things that happens is that you really don't have any willingness to listen to the other party. You really don't experience or involve yourself with anybody else. And so what happens is you just kind of listen to your own thoughts or talk to people who sound and think and value the same as you. And so it's more like talking to an echo chamber. And you just kind of shut down anybody that doesn't agree with you. Well, one of the things that I think everyone is concerned about, and I don't find anybody not concerned about this, is safety in schools. That we want our kids to be safe. We want to know when we send our kids off to school, we don't have to worry about violence in their schools. I mean, everyone agrees on that. And then you get into this area of gun control, and then it's all over the place, right? That, whether you think we should have certain kinds of guns and, it's really hard to draw a line. It's like we have certain laws. We have laws like, I don't know. I just was watching the news. It was just a shooting yesterday, right? And so the police chief was saying, we need more gun laws. But it turns out that the person that did the shooting yesterday, and I think it was yesterday, was someone who already shouldn't have had a gun. He illegally got a gun. There were already laws against him getting a gun, but those laws didn't work. So more laws wouldn't have changed that for that individual. I'm not saying we shouldn't change laws. I'm just saying that we argue a lot about guns, but one of the things that no one should argue about is the Sandy Hook Promise program, Know the Signs. Mark Burden, who's one of the parents who lost a child in Sandy Hook, Promise was on our show. He was on our show as a result of someone that works with WPKN saying, Chuck, you really should have a show about this. And I thought about it, and I said, well, I certainly know about Sandy Hook Promise, and I've done shows about social and emotional learning, but I hadn't done one specifically on Sandy Hook Promise. When Mark came to the show and told me about Know the Signs program, I listened to him and I thought, wow. So let me tell you just a little bit about what he said. And you can look again, PRX Public Radio Exchange. You can find that program if you want to listen to it. But the program, and what he said on the program, was that the Know the Signs program was about teaching kids in middle school and high school what to look for when someone might be potentially harmful to either themselves and or to others. What signs do you look for? And what do you do when you see the signs? What way can you communicate when you're concerned to a series of people, different kinds of law enforcement that might get involved or will get involved, who can investigate the possible violent person and shut it down before anything ever happens? Now, when I was listening to Mark talk about this, I was trying to understand. So there's nothing to do with guns here. This is just about somebody who might have guns in his home, might be planning on shooting somebody or doing something awful, but this isn't about changing the gun laws. This is just about everybody in schools who recognizes when somebody seems off, just something's wrong, or they're saying some things that are really scary, and a way for you to report it anonymously and allow the people who can do something about it to investigate it, and when appropriate, get involved and stop the event possibly of a shooting from happening. And Mark said we have incredible amounts of evidence of how many times our programs have led to the intervention where people have been stopped, prevented from doing something awful. And I thought, well, what do you charge for it, Mark? Is it very expensive? He said, we do it for free. We're totally donation-based. One of my daughters contributes regularly to the Sandy Hook Promise Fund. She has, some account that goes out of her credit card that goes every week. She has kids in school, but she just so believes in what they're doing. Now, they have other programs that are really good programs, too. But this program was about safety, and I thought, well, why isn't everybody doing it? He said, I don't know, Chuck. I said, I wish everybody would. Now, having told you that, I'm very proud of this because I went back to my own community. I live in Simsbury. And I went back and I asked my first selectman and our state representative, I said, do you know if we're doing this program? Because our kids are all grown. We pay attention to what goes on in schools, but not that closely. And I had a conversation as a result of my interaction with those two folks, with the chairman of the board, who has told me that they embrace what Sandy Hook is doing. They do have the Know the Science program, and they're very happy they have it, and so are the kids, and so are the parents that have kids in the schools. Now, having said that, I encourage every one of you listening to go out, and if you have children or you care about this, go to a school board meeting and raise your hand and ask the question, do we have the Know the Science program from Sandy Hook Promise? And if not, why not? Won't cost us anything, and it helps to guarantee more safety. We can't guarantee total safety. Nobody can. But if it's going to help us prevent any event of violence from happening in our schools, why isn't everybody in the country doing this? I've actually written to my Congresswoman, Johanna Hayes, to see if she would actually support some kind of federal legislation that promotes schools doing this. I'm not sure if we need to fund it because it's donations already, but maybe there's some way that the federal government could get involved in helping organizations bring this to their schools. Because there's nothing to argue with here. It's actually helping everybody, even the potentially violent person. Hopefully, when the intervention happens, they get help instead of, end up dead. So there's no downside to this that I can see, and so again, I'm proud of that as something I've done on this show in years, and in very recent times actually. But then I've done other things in the show too. I've had some wonderful guests on at different times. I've had again recently another book, Helping People Change by Richard Boyatzis. The friends of mine in the coaching community. If you've ever tried to coach someone, any kind of coaching really, but this is about leader coaching mostly, but it's really about any kind of coaching. Richard Boyatzis' book, Helping People Change, also brand new this year. I had a wonderful conversation with Richard. People didn't know this about him, and we because I know him as a friend now. We had a conversation about his book because I talked with him about the fact that I bet nobody knows that you started out as a rocket scientist, which he did. But that and people didn't know that when he was an immigrant, when his parents came over from Greece, and he spoke Greek and he didn't speak the English language very well, that they put him in special classes. They didn't think he was that bright. Anyway, it's a fun interview, but it's also some tremendously powerful information about how do you help people that need some coaching, some great ideas in the book. That's another thing I'm proud of. So if you got any things that you think that you've heard on the radio that you thought were really good, some of the comments or conversations I've had with callers about trying to help them with their life. The show is normally about helping people with their lives. Sometimes, and this is true in my experience of doing this for some really probably 40 years in terms of helping people deal with emotions and tough situations that challenge us. People call in about work-related situations where they have difficulty with a leader, with a teammate, with a worker that works for them if they happen to be a supervisor, a team leader, or a leader at some other level. Or are they just struggling internally with whether they should make a move or not, or how to get promoted, or they have all kinds of questions. Or they got a bad performance review and they didn't think it was fair. Or how do you deal with all the emotional stuff at work? And then what about at home? How do you deal at home? And I've done a few different shows. I've tried to talk to people about, how do you handle the toughest conversations? The conversations where people's beliefs are so strong that they can't listen to one another without getting mad at each other. Those are things like the topic of abortion. It's our politics today. There's just some things that are so tough to talk about when you feel differently based on a different value than the person you're talking with. How do we collaborate more? How do we still love someone in our family if they're on the other side of these issues that are so important to us as individuals? I've seen families torn apart sometimes by issues like this. So it's so important to me to really think about, as you're having conversations, how do you want to feel? How do you want the person you're talking to feel? What are you willing and able to do to make sure that you feel the way you want and need to feel, and the person you're talking to feels the way you think it's important for them to feel about talking with you? I joked recently, one of the things I learned is that sometimes you learn things in funny places. A lot of things come from these people I know in the field of emotional intelligence and psychology that I've worked with over many years. But sometimes they come from strange places. Like one of the best ideas I learned about trying to be smarter about our conversations with other people came from a comedian named Greg Ferguson. He said that one of the things that several things that he's learned are, one is, just before he says something that potentially might be controversial or almost certainly will be, he asks himself, does this really need to be said? Now, I've asked myself that too at times. And the answer is no, it doesn't. And then the other question is, does it need to be said by me? Do I need to be the one saying it? And the third is, does it need to be said by me now? Is this really the best time for it? Anyway, I hope that's helpful to you, because that's been very helpful to me. And I learned it from Craig Ferguson, who said it took him 3 marriages to learn to ask those 3 questions before he spoke. So anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed the show over the years as I've been doing it. I take a lot of pride in that. One of the things that I did was I had a forum for a while about women in the workplace. I have 3 daughters and my wife. So I've lived with 4 women in my world for a long time, for a lot of years, and they've all experienced some issues that have to do mostly with being women in the workplace that men don't experience. I have to say at times it's been an advantage, but mostly it's not. And so I had a series on which was about women in the workplace. And I had different people call in and talk about some of the differences that they experience, successful people in the workplace. And one of the people I had on was my daughter, Becky, who had some wonderful ideas. She's been very active in the workplace. She's actually got a wonderful job these days, and she's in charge of a chemical company's research and analytical chemistry across the entire North America. And if you know anything about chemists and people who are leaders in the field of chemistry in large corporations, there aren't too many women. And she's one of very few. But she's also a leader in that world and trying to help to bring more women on board and allow for more diversity of all kinds in the workplace. So I was very proud of the series that we did on that at one point. So I'm kind of reminiscing about some of the things that I felt have really worked really well over the years that I think are important about the show. And one of the things that I wonder about too, I was reading an article by Bill George this morning in Harvard Business Review, one of the recent ones, and it was about retirement of CEOs. Now, I know my audience might have a few CEOs, but probably most of you aren't CEOs, so what would that have to do with anything to do with the audience? Well, it doesn't so much in terms of retirement for CEOs, except that the article, to me, was more about retirement in general. What happens when you retire? And that was another idea I thought that was really important to maybe bring up and talk about at times, and I have. So I think one of the things that I would ask people as they listen to this show is to think about, if you feel you could get some help for yourself, don't hesitate to call. You know, I've got about 25 minutes left now, and I'd like to open up the lines to see if somebody's got something they'd like to talk about. Again, if you want to reminisce about something on the show or something you like about the show, because I've talked about, this is my 10th year doing the show, and I have thought at some point, when do I stop? When do I stop doing this? When do I stop working? And so far, I love what I do, so I'm going to continue. But you do need to think about, when do you go out? When do you really find, hey, this probably should be the last time I do this, and then go on to other things? Because I think if you just stagnate and you don't grow and you don't learn anymore, it's hard to maintain an enthusiasm for living. That's why so many people, and particularly men, when their jobs ended, they didn't have many more years left, it seems. So it's really important to think and plan, at least somewhat, what you might want to do after you're through with what you're doing today. This isn't just for CEOs, it's for everybody to think about. But anyway, if you've got something that you'd like to share, or you've got something you want to ask about, because for those of you that are new listeners, the show really often is about having you call in with something that you've got on your mind that you're not sure about. Because I started to say this earlier, what I found is that when smart people are stuck, excellent problem solvers, really good critical thinkers, when they've got something that's a problem or a challenge or even an opportunity, however you're framing it, and you're not sure how to proceed, my experience is it's almost always because something emotional is happening. And when something emotional is happening, we don't really have the tools. We didn't learn about emotions the way some kids are learning about it today, about how to label them, how to express them, how to regulate them, how to recognize and understand them. We didn't really learn a lot about that growing up, other than just through trial and error. Maybe we had some good teachers along the way. We had parents who were really good at this stuff. Or some teacher in a school system or coach in either in music lessons or a sporting event or something, where someone helped us to deal with challenging emotional situations. And so we're pretty good at this maybe. But probably you don't have a lot of experience. And certainly if you're stuck, even if you are experienced and normally good at this, if you want to give me a call, the number is 203-336-9756. And I'll walk you through the emotion roadmap and how this concept I conceived of all those years ago. I started working on this with Peter Salovey and Jack Mayer and David Crusoe. All those experiences will feed my ability to help you deal with something that you're struggling with. So let me stop. Been talking for a while. Excited about my 10th year anniversary. And let you call if you like. 203-336-9756. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Oh, this is David from New Haven.
Hi, David. Thanks for the call. How can I help you today?
Well, I just enjoy listening to your show, a reasonable, soothing voice, and also could bring up a topic about the use of computers. They're usually good, but there's also some bad aspects of computers. People can be tricked, and their emotions can be used in a bad way.
You want to say a little more about it? I actually agree with you. What are your thoughts about it?
I just like to say that some people can be tricked by their computer use instead of meeting people face to face.
Okay, that's an angle that's interesting. Well, it's not just computers. I think it's smartphones too. I mean, I've seen, one of the things that makes, I think, communication and relationships work really well is when we're face to face with one another. And then I think the secondary was when we talk to each other on the phone. And then the third and least maybe effective way is to go through emails or text. And I think people rely far too much on text these days for building relationships. And so I think if that's part of your angle, I agree with that. I wish people had more, communications face to face. I think you see it when you see people walking down the street, and even when they're walking with people, they're looking at their phones.
Absolutely.
It's kind of crazy. Well, anyway, thank you for your compliment about the show, David.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoy the show, especially for the senior citizens who are sometimes alone. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the call. I appreciate it. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
So, anybody else got something they'd like to share? The number again is 203-336-9756. So thanks, David, for the phone call, and I'm glad you enjoy listening to the show. I've gotten a lot of nice compliments about the shows over the years. Sometimes a particular show motivates people to write to me, and I'll get an email about the show, and I've shared a few of those with the general manager and the program director. It's kind of nice to be able to share when we get something. I think a lot of times people like things, but they don't necessarily reinforce what they like. I know I get anytime we stay at a hotel or we go to a restaurant and they have our name or email address or something, we immediately get, how did you like us? Did we do everything we needed to? And it can get to be annoying. I get that. But at the same time, I also know anytime I've heard a speaker or I found someone something that I really enjoyed, I try to push myself to let the person know, hey, I thought that was pretty special. I really enjoyed what you had to say. I particularly liked, and then share something I may have liked, or just in general, just say, I just wanted you to know. Yeah, that as a speaker, as somebody who does, speaking events, it's really nice when people come up after your event and let you know that they really enjoyed listening to you and that they particularly liked something, or or they'd like to get in touch with you later, or they'd like to be connected on LinkedIn or something. But if you have something, again, that you thought has been nice about the show over the years and you want to share it, be delighted to hear from you. 203-336-9756. Also, if you've got something you'd like to call about, now, again, people call about different things. I've had lots of phone calls about sometimes college students who are struggling being away from home. It's another show, actually, I did one of the ones I like to play it periodically in the beginning of the new school year when parents are first sending their daughters off to school. I should do one for sons too, I guess. But it seemed like I had 3 daughters, so it was more personal, more meaningful to me, actually. And I think people tend to have a little more concern sometimes about their daughters than their sons. Although if you just have sons, I'm sure that's not true for you. You're just as concerned about your sons. But anyway, one time I did a show, this is when I was doing that women's series, about sending your daughters off to college, university. And I had 2 young, girls turning into women, I guess. There was 17, 18-year-old seniors who were going off to college and talking about what was in their minds, what were they concerned about, what were they excited about. And at the same time, I had somebody on who was a person who dealt with freshmen at the University of Hartford, particularly focused on working with young girls or women coming into schools at the University of Hartford to the different colleges there. And what are the things that the 2 young women with me in the studio should be concerned about, and some things that makes life better, and some of the transitional moments where you feel like almost everybody feels like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm this far from home, and also how to deal with the excitement of being away for the first time. So again, that's a show I got a lot of great feedback on. I continue to like to play it periodically in the August, so people are thinking about things that they can do and what to expect when they are first sending especially your oldest daughter, and you've never done this before, what your experience might be like. So again, if you want to call in, 203-336-9756, and I'll give you a minute. Well, I hope my soothing voice hasn't put you to sleep. Anyway, again, if you got something you'd like to share about the show, great. But if you have something you'd like some help with, I've got a little bit of time left to make sure I can talk with people if they've got something that they'd like me to address. And let me tell you, I've had some wonderful experiences where people have called in with some things that have been really bothering them for a long time. And because I focus on the emotions and I ask questions like this, I ask, what is it you're feeling about the situation right now? What are your current feelings? If they're not sure, I kind of listen to them talk about it, and I offer some suggestions to help you with that. And then if there's somebody else that you're dealing with that's part of this, sometimes it's just something internal, by the way, so it's just about you. But a lot of times it's with somebody else. What is he or she or they feeling? And what do you think would be ideal for you to feel? And is what you're feeling different than what's ideal? And if it is, what might we do to close the gap? What might we do to get you from feeling, nervous to calm, for instance? What could we do to help you with that? And about the other person, if they're feeling disrespected maybe because of something that happened, and you want them to feel valued and appreciated, what could you do maybe to make that happen? And anyway, what I do is I help you to look at the emotions that are in play and work through that with you. So that if you call up and you feel like you don't have something that you know can be helpful for a situation you're facing, I work really quickly and hard to make sure before the phone call ends, you get something that's working for you, that makes sense to you, that you're really willing to do and able to do. So let me give you a minute to call if you've got something like that you'd like to ask about. By the way, when you ask, one of the beauties of the show and the thing I'm proudest of is that I decided to do the show when Lou Pomalis asked me all these years ago because I thought, not everybody can afford to pay me to be a motivational speaker or to pay for somebody else to be a coach for them or to have a trainer come in and work with them. Those things aren't inexpensive. So I thought I want as many people in the world as I can reach to learn how to do what I've learned how to do, which is use this emotion roadmap to make life better internally for me, to help me manage my own emotional state and to create more inner peace for me, and also for me to help others to do the same, to create more inner peace for them, and also to build better relationships with other people. I think that the world is in a tough place in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things that are scary about what's happening in the world all the time. I mean, just the fact that, change is escalating so rapidly. And I mean, those of us that are a little older can remember smartphones are only a recent event. GPSs, everybody used to use maps. Almost nobody uses maps today, and everybody depends on GPSs. I mean, those are just some simple things that are making major differences in the world today. I mean, we get mad. This is a funny thing, I think. I'll be talking to a friend of mine in California, and I'll drive over an area where the signal is poor, and I drop the phone call, and I get mad. I get mad because I can't talk, because the signal isn't strong enough for me to talk to somebody 3,000 miles away in my car. I mean, who thought you could do that ever, right? So, I mean, there's so many things that we take for granted, and change is only going to escalate. The idea of artificial intelligence having amazing amounts. I mean, look what people do with Alexa in their homes today, right? You control this. Where do you get your information from? Google, Siri. These are all things that didn't exist just a few years back. More to come, and faster and faster and faster. So just adapting to change. But same thing's true about weaponry. Right? So, I mean, there's the level of advancement of weapons that could destroy the world is extremely scary. So, my contribution to world peace, my big picture thinking, is if I can help everybody who listens to me, whether you're on the radio or if I'm making a speech someplace, or if I'm if I'm doing a workshop somewhere or a webinar somewhere, anybody that I can reach, that I help them to generate more inner peace, I think we got a better chance for world peace. I think all of us should be doing that, folks. And the ways you do it is you try to be empathetic. You try to be kind more than maybe you normally would. It's just you just do the things that you think are the right things to do for people. You try to keep your ego in check. You try not to get too defensive if somebody's got something constructive they want to say to you that they think you could do better and different. There's so many things that cause us emotionally to churn. How do we turn all that around? So I love doing the show because I love helping people. And I know that over the years, lots of people who have called have gotten helped. And when they get helped, I try to explain how I'm helping them, not just it's kind of like the idea of teaching a person to fish rather than giving them a fish. If you give them a fish, they're going to be hungry in a few hours again. But if you teach them to fish, they can feed themselves. I want to teach people how to use this emotion roadmap themselves, not need an expert. So if you've been listening for a lot of years, I hope that you're learning how to ask yourself when things just seem off. Hey, wait a minute. What am I feeling? That's not how I want to feel. Wait, well, if I ask the question, then what would be ideal to feel here? Not think about how to do it, but just ask what would be ideal to feel. Okay, if I want to feel calm and I'm not, what do I know that helps me to feel calm? And are some of the things that I've done in the past to feel calm, would they make any sense right now to help me feel calm in this situation? Often there's a place in ourselves that we can draw on to look at previous successes and draw on our strengths. And when we can do that, and when we can form a plan based on our own success in the past that relates to that success in the past, we have a lot of confidence in that plan. And so when I'm talking to you on the phone, I'm asking you questions like that. Have you ever found yourself, when you've been agitated and you needed to feel calm, that you're able to do that in some way? And is there some time in your past when you really thought it was impossible to feel calm, and yet you did? And when you can say yes to that and say, is there something in that past experience? I know they're completely different experiences, but the feelings are the same. Is there something in that past experience that might lend itself to helping you here? And if you can say yes to that, then I ask you to tell me a little bit about what you did and how it might be helpful. And then I help you build that and build on that. And when we're done, we have a plan that you can answer the questions. Are you able and are you willing? And you can say, absolutely yes. And then you got a plan. And then you're hopeful and everything's changed. Your outlook has changed, your tone has changed, your emotions have changed. And you feel really good. And that, when I do that, is not only helping you, it's helping everybody else who's listening. And that's a gift that you're giving to the community when you're willing to pick the phone up and call and share. So let me ask you, if you want to call about something that you might like some help with, whether it's at work or at home or somewhere in your community, somewhere in life where you're feeling challenged a bit and you're not sure how to proceed, that's what I'm here to help you with. Again, I'm Chuck Wolf. You've been listening to WPKN 89.5 FM in Bridgeport. We serve Fairfield, New Haven, and Litchfield counties in Connecticut and Suffolk County in New York's Long Island. We stream around the world at WPKN.org. You can listen to us on TuneIn Radio, Radio Free America, and you can get the WPKN app, which is free, WPKN Live. You can also listen to podcasts by going to WPKN.org. Okay, the number to call, 203-336-9756, 203-336-9756. I'm Chuck Wolf. You're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. Two 336-9756. Sometimes I wish I had one of those talk shows that was about sports or politics. Not that I want to talk about those things nonstop, but it just generates a lot of phone calls because people have such strong opinions about things. But I'm actually here for you, so I'll give you one last shot at that. I have another topic I'll talk about, but if you're thinking that you might want to call, I'm not back until January. It's a chance to get some help from somebody who's helped a lot of people, and I'd love to help you. It makes life meaningful for me in a way. So 203-336-9756. Well, it doesn't look like I'm going to get a caller, so I will assume that you're sitting back just enjoying the show and you're done with calling. So let me tell you about something else that's kind of interesting to me. I have a lot of different people I talk with over the years and get to know and share ideas with and generate creative solutions to different ideas or situations. And one of them is a friend that I've made recently, a fellow named Ben Palmer. And if you want to look Ben up, you look up Genus Surveys, Genos, which I guess is spiritual in Greek, but Genus Surveys. It's an emotional intelligence survey. But he and I, he's introduced me to a new tool that's sort of based a little bit on the roadmap, which is this idea that inside every workplace is an emotional culture. In other words, where everybody works, they have certain feelings. They have feelings of anxious, stressed, appreciated, valued, mistreated, empowered, rewarded, recognized, different feelings that people experience in the workplace. And he has a tool that is now, you can do this online. You can do it in with your smartphone. So you can go to a link that he sends you, or that you just, I guess you copy and paste into your phone, and you fill in some demographic information about yourself, and then you answer the question about on anxious. What is your current feeling about your workplace? 1 to 5. 1, I don't feel anxious at all. 5, I feel very anxious. So how are you currently feeling? Same thing on appreciated. Let's just take one pleasant, one unpleasant. Anxious being unpleasant, appreciated being pleasant. And you rate yourself as 1 is low, I don't feel much at all. 5 meaning I'm very anxious. And the numbers in between representing something of a scale. And then the same thing on appreciated. So you fill this out for yourself on like 10 different dimensions of feelings. And you first write down what your current feeling is. The next thing you're asked is on the same feelings, words and scales, what is your expected feeling? For instance, I might expect to feel anxious to a small degree at times. That's kind of a good thing, and it keeps me on my toes, keeps me focused, as opposed to no anxiousness at all. I don't expect that. And then what would be ideal to feel? And sometimes what's expected and what's ideal are different. And you get 3 different graphs that show what your current feeling is, what your expected feelings are. And you could, let's just say that ideally you don't want to feel anxious at all, but you're in a big change period. And so your expected feelings of anxiousness might be that we're going to be anxious for a while until we get this right. But I'm way over the top anxious because some things have just gone wrong recently, and I'm panicked about them. So you can see where your feelings might be really different at all 3 dimensions. And then you get a profile for yourself. Now, this is in real time, but let's say I had 1,000 people in front of me, and there were, manufacturing teams from different parts of the world in the automobile industry. And you had people from Mexico, you had people from Germany, you had people from America, you had people from Japan. And they're all working for the same company. They're all manufacturing, and they're in different teams. And because of the demographics, the way you fill the demographics again, I can not only show you your own score immediately, as soon as everybody does this, I can also then, in turn, put up a graphic on the screen and show everybody, here's what the Mexican manufacturing teams are experiencing right now in terms of current feelings, and summarized, kind of a midpoint and the ranges, and then what their expected feelings are and their ideal. Here's what Germany's feeling. It's quite different, actually. Here's what Japan is feeling. Here's what America's feeling. And then you can actually talk about these things. And then the question is, how do you talk about them? Oh, I got a call. Hi. Sorry, I missed the call, I guess. You got a couple minutes if you want to call back. I'll take the call. I'll watch now. Yeah, I was into this conversation about emotional culture. You can assess this emotional culture in a way that is immediate. Then the question is, how do you talk about it? Let's say you find out that your team is highly anxious, don't feel very appreciated, and mostly a very negative view of what's going on. Not just with one person, but with many people across your entire region, for instance. And if that's happening and that's going on, how do you talk about it? Chances are people are going to be defensive talking about it. People are going to be reluctant to talk about it. And so that's when you teach people how to use the emotion roadmap to talk about it, right? Anyway, this is what we're collaborating on. Kind of exciting because no one's ever really measured it this way. And you can do it instantaneously. It's not like it takes a lot of time to send out a lot of stuff to people. It's fascinating. Okay? So again, if you want to call me, I just got a minute or two left. 203-336-9756. I do want to wish everybody a happy holiday season. I encourage you to be kind and loving with people, even when you disagree with them about all kinds of things. Try to get past that. Okay. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. I just got a minute. Who's calling, please?
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. Did you want to say something?
Chuck?
Yes, this is Chuck.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
I was actually driving and I was like, wow, I can't believe nobody's calling. So I'm not really calling for myself, but for my daughter, but she's too nervous to call. So what I was going to ask you, or maybe you could give her some advice. I know you don't have a lot of time.
I have no time. I'm out of time. I'm really sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I wish I wish I could stay on, but somebody comes in right after me, and it's not fair. So I'm sorry you didn't
Okay,
call
well,
earlier, but
maybe we'll wait till January one
okay.
time.
I hope so. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I appreciate the
Well,
call.
anyway, thank you, though. I appreciate your vibe and what your message is. And so did she, even though we didn't get to talk or give our question.
Okay, thanks so much for the call.
Okay,
Have a great
thanks.
holiday season. Bye bye. Folks, that's it for me. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and a Happy New Year, and whatever else you celebrate. And I hope it all goes as joyfully as you can hope for. Even more importantly, I wish you all a year of good health. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.